I have an excellent show for you today. I have comedian Jimmy Dore, who has become the most desired man in political commentary. This should be a fun show. Jimmy, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So I have probably seven or eight really deep questions. Well, I think they are. I think by the end you'll think this guy's really deep, or this is a complete schmuck. Why did they sign me up for him again? So
Okay.
first thing I wanted to go through with you. I was shocked, but I expected this. But it's come out in the last couple of days that the Russian Federation army waltzed into Kharkiv, Ukraine, completely undeterred because hundreds of millions of dollars of US taxpayer money that went to the area actually was never spent. It was fake contractor jobs, and these people just pocketed the money. So essentially, all of the worry and rumors about this war being a grift and a fraud and money laundering has just absolutely been proven true. Ukraine, being the most corrupt country in Europe, has just been proven true. What are your thoughts on this story coming out about hundreds of millions of dollars literally going to fake contract jobs?
Well, we've been saying that here since the day one of this war, sending uh billions, hundreds of billions of dollars to the most corrupt country in Europe without any oversight. And then when people demand to have oversight for it in Congress, they get voted down. So it just uh, I mean, just imagine what if they could have spent that money here. Maybe people could have clean water in Flint, Michigan. Anyway, this is, I try to explain to people that our government isn't, they, when I say our government is 100% corrupt, they think like, oh, you know, Donald Trump got his kid hooked up a business deal with his kids with the Saudis, or Joe Biden got his kid a no-show job on a Ukraine energy board. That's regular corruption. So, but what I'm talking about is nothing really happens in Washington unless there's corruption, right? Unless it serves a donor, or if it serves the corporate class. And that's exactly what the Ukraine war is. You said it. It's a money laundering operation, and that's what I mean, we're bankrupting, we're ending the way all empires end. I tweeted out of a short video the other day, and it kind of went viral. And it's me is sitting in front of a video, and the globe of the United of the Earth is spinning, and it's got a blue dot for every U.S. military base, and it's just completely covered. No matter where you look, Central America, Latin America, South America, you look in Africa, the Middle East, of course, Europe, surrounding China, Thailand. I mean, Singapore, the Philippines. I mean, um, so we're ending this way. We're bankrupting our country. We're printing money to do this, which causes inflation, which devalues the dollar, and we're not doing it to help us, right? It's like if we got something out of this, maybe economically I could see, but we're not. And now finally, there are some leaders in Europe that are standing up against this Ukraine war and the sanctions that we're putting on Russia on top of it, which are hurting the United States. And hurting Europe. And so Europe, when we blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, that hurt Europe. Now Europe, because they still need that energy, right? Then so we thought, well, we're going to sell them that liquefied natural gas. Well, what is happening is they're just getting it other ways, and from Russia, and now they have to spend more money. So Germany, for instance, is spending two, three, four times the price for energy as they were before we blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. So we're doing all this. It's a proxy war with the United States and Russia. It's to hurt them economically, and Russia's doing much better than they ever were. And who's hurting? The United States is hurting again. And that's because the people who run this country, and it's not hyperbole when I say they don't work for the voters. We literally live in an oligarchy. This is what it looks like. And nobody wants that money going to Ukraine anymore. for it, but it's still going to go to Ukraine. Just like people don't, 70% of the country wants a ceasefire in Israel, Gaza. You ain't getting it. Joe Biden's just gave them more arms, more money just yesterday. So again, the government, the Congress, the president, they don't work for us. They work for a handful of billionaires and corporations that actually run things. And that's proven by a Princeton study over 10 years ago now. So that's not just my guess. That's not an accusation. That's a researched, bona fide fact. So, um, people then always say to me, well, what do we do, right? Because voting isn't going to get us out of this. Voting for Trump isn't going to get us out of this, right? Trump is maybe a slightly milder version of Joe Biden in some ways, and maybe worse in other ways. Donald Trump still wants credit for the vaccine. He gave Fauci a medal. And he won't reverse on that. He won't admit that that was a bad idea. And he's now proposing. He made sure the last round of money to Ukraine got through, and he's even more hawkish on Israel, Gaza than Biden, if that's possible. But 100,000 people just showed up at a rally for Donald Trump in Philadelphia because they're desperate for change. But I hate to break it to you, the change you think that you want is not coming from Donald Trump. So what can we do? I'm just a comedian turned political commentator. I see what the trucker protests in Canada really works. It really shut them down. That's what scares them. And we would need the truckers, we would need farmers, we would need workers of all stripes to come together to demand a mini revolution in the United States. And I don't even know if it's a mini. Because they don't work for you, not even a little bit. Even the people who say they do, Bernie Sanders, AOC, they're just there to make sure that a third party doesn't happen. They're there to make sure to take all that progressive revolutionary energy and funnel it back into an anti-worker, pro-war party. And that's their function. That's why they're allowed to keep doing what they're doing. That's where I hate to bring you the bad news, but there is no easy way out of this, and things are only going to keep getting worse and worse. And I think it seems to me Tucker Carlson agrees with me on this, that a lot of people do, that the goal now of the people who are actually running the country, which I said before is a handful of billionaires and corporation, is to make things horrible in the United States. It seems like that is their actual goal. So your life is miserable. So you beg for authoritarian answers to our problems, right? So, the immigration's so bad, we want a smart border wall. What a smart border wall just means electronic surveillance for everybody, right? So you start to beg for these things, and so now you beg for the pandemic, which they created in a lab in Wuhan, it's so bad. We want vaccine passports, and then they're going to go to the digital currency, and and climate change is so bad. So it's all these things to scare you, frighten you, make your life miserable, so you beg for authoritarian answers for it. That's what I think. And it's coming from a place, it's coming from Davos, it's coming from the WEF, again, at the WHO. Look at this pandemic treaty that they're trying to push down our throats right now. 49 Republican senators actually stood up and wrote a letter against it. I hope that more senators join on, but this is just a power grab again by unelected puppets of the billionaire class, and they own our media, and they control the narrative, and that's why they have to shut down these protests. You don't have to agree with the protesters on college campuses. I do, but what's noteworthy is how fast and how hard they have to come in with authoritarian measures to crack down and stop that, right? Because that if they lose the narrative, then it will. Well, there was a guy from Planter, which is a CIA cutout intelligence organization, funded by Peter Thiel. and others, and he said that if we lose the intellectual debate on college campuses, if we lose that narrative, then we won't be able to deploy armies, Western armies, anywhere around the world again. So that's why they're cracking down so hard, because as someone once said, they're not upset because those protesters are upsetting the peace. They're upset because they're upsetting their war. So that's a long answer to that question, but that's what I think.
Well, that's what I wanted to hear. I do take a little bit of courage. I don't know if you've seen this on Twitter or other places, but in England, they have all of these cameras all over the place that the mayor has put in. They're literally cutting them down, like they're taking axes to them, samurai swords, cars with pulleys, and they are just breaking these down because people are saying, "Wait a minute, we don't want to be spied on. We want our independence back." So I do think that there's a revolution coming. I just don't know what it fully looks like, but it will be interesting to watch that. Here in Utah, we have the lovely Senator Mitt Romney. He's obviously being replaced, but he said two interesting things in the past day. He said it's embarrassing that Republican leaders are in New York supporting Trump over his alleged involvement with a porn star. The other thing he said was Joe Biden made a huge mistake by not pardoning Donald Trump so that the country could actually move on and heal. Romney said Biden should have pardoned him and then pressured New York to drop the hush money case. What are your thoughts on Mitt Romney's comments?
Wow, it's what took so long is, I guess, my question. What I was always shocked that there weren't more elected Republicans standing up saying something about these political prosecutions of Donald Trump, right? Again, not a fan of Donald Trump, didn't vote for him, not going to vote for him, but I'm smart enough to see the game that's being played. And the game that is being played is that the threat to the donor class is actual democracy. And so, if you remember, after Donald Trump was elected and Brexit happened at the same time, there were headlines everywhere, and in the corporate billionaire-owned news press in the Western world saying the problem with democracy is democracy. The problem with participation democracy is the people participating. That they could not let democracy happen again, and meaning Brexit, meaning Donald Trump's election, and so they made sure that it didn't happen again. And now they're kicking. They've always done. They've always kicked a third party people off the ballots. They've always been anti-democratic. So there's no bigger farce and punchline than the Democrats saying democracy's on the ballot. After they try to kick the Green Party off the ballot, they try to kick Donald Trump off the ballot. They try to put their number one political opponent in jail and criminalize his entire political movement. And then they try to make protesting a felony. So as they're trying to again slowly torture the number one most decorated journalist of our time, Julian Assange. So it's all propaganda. It's all garbage. And so I'm good. I'm glad to hear Mitt Romney finally say something. That's the only thing I've heard him say sensible in a long time. And yeah, I don't what. I wonder why it took him so long. But I think I know why it took them, because they all work for the same people, the donor class that wants to hate Donald Trump, which again is just amazing to me. That just shows you how powerful the war machine is. And the reason why the donor class wants to criminalize Donald Trump and his movement so badly was because they couldn't control him as 100% as they could control Barack Obama, George Bush, and Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton, right? And so he didn't do war the way they wanted him to. And that's it. That's all it takes. I mean, he ran on a non-interventionist policy in 2016, and that was enough to get the FBI to lie to the FISA court 17 times against him. They've lied. The FBI lied 17 times, we know for a fact, so they could get a phone tap on Donald Trump, and they couldn't even find a crime that they could convict him of. And so that's why, and all their prosecutions against him are crumbling. Right. So we find out the FBI staged those document photos of his classified documents. Right. And again, at the same time, Joe Biden has classified documents sitting in a garage. And and Joe Biden wasn't even president when he took those classified documents. Donald Trump can declassify any classified documents he wants as president. Joe Biden didn't have that power. All the way. So it's just clear. And there's lots of FBI guys who weren't for that raid on Mar-a-Lago. And you find out these details drip out. And now the prosecutor admits, yeah, they staged those photos, and that's not how they found them, and everything was tampered with. So that case is over. They have the case where now this current case, who's the stripper he was supposed to have paid off? What's her name?
Stormy Daniels.
Stormy Daniels. Even Bill Maher shows the videotape. Well, she's lying now, he says, because she shows the videotape of her on his show from a few years ago, where she said it wasn't a Me Too. She wasn't harassed. She wasn't threatened. She wasn't under duress when she had sex with Donald Trump, and now she's saying she is. So it's just lie after. And then, of course, the case where he inflated the price of his building so he could get a loan that he paid back, and the bank made more money off of him. The bank would love to do business with him again. So again, and everybody inflates the price of their a property. That's why the bank does their own due diligence. So everybody knows, that's like saying a car dealer inflated the price of their car. Everybody knows that this is a political prosecution. The only problem is half the country doesn't care that they bend the rules, wreck democracy, undermine the Constitution to go after their political enemy, because they've been told they're fighting Hitler. And so everything's okay if you're fighting Hitler. That's what they've been told, so that's what they think. The actual Hitler is the establishment billionaire donor class that runs both parties, the Democrats and Republicans. And so that's why we live in a world where we don't have health care. People go bankrupt when they get sick. You have people living under every bridge. We don't have functioning infrastructure. We don't have high-speed trains. They have them in communist China. We don't have health care. They have it in Israel. That's where, and they have it in Ukraine. Ukraine government is being completely funded by the United States. So this is the result. This is the result. You have people under mountains of student loan debt. You have 80% of workers living paycheck to paycheck, people living under bridges. You get assaulted by crack meth heads just to go into the 7-Eleven. You have a wide open border. Somehow we can secure the border of Ukraine and Russia. We can secure the border between Gaza and Israel. We can't secure the border between Mexico and the United States, and that's intentional. And so we're being ruled by rapacious oligarchs who I hate this country and don't care. They don't care if we fall into a civil war, because a civil war, chaos always favors the establishment, and they're actually trying to set that kind of thing up. They want us to hate each other. That's the whole thing. Every news story, they get their billionaire-owned press, which there's only 6 companies that run all the news in the United States. And, newsmen used to come from blue collar backgrounds. Now they don't. They come from Ivy League schools, and they're class loyal, and they're handpicked by billionaires to work at those places. So they get them to report every story in a way that makes us turn on each other, right? They want COVID. Oh, it's the person who's trying to kill you is your neighbor, right? And climate change. No matter what it is, could be Ukraine war. Everybody's a Nazi or a white supremacist, and everybody's your enemy. Anybody's anti-science or anti-women. It's just so, and they can do this because they can control the narrative with the media, and then they censor social media. And that's why they hate Elon Musk so much, because he gave a little bit more free speech on one social media platform. And that's why they hate him. And that's why they're getting rid of TikTok, by the way. They're getting get rid of TikTok at the behest of the Israel AIPAC lobby, because people go on 100 million people in the United States watch TikTok for more than 20 minutes a day. And that's where they're getting their news from. And so they want to get rid of that, right? Because if they can't control the narrative, then they have to start disappearing people, and that's a lot harder.
Yeah, wow. Democracy is on the ballot, just not in Ukraine. We've given them almost $200 billion, and now they're saying, well, Zelensky needs to stay in charge for the next 10 years, and the US taxpayer needs to graciously fund this war for the next 10 years. Like, I thought we were fighting for democracy, and at their first chance, they literally shut down voting for a new president, a new person who might say, wait a minute, maybe we actually do want a peace deal with Vladimir Putin, and we don't want another 500,000 Ukrainians to die. But you know, what do I know? I'm just a guy on the internet, right?
Yeah, I mean, not only that, but Zelensky has outlawed the opposition press in Ukraine. He's outlawed opposition political parties. Uh, they're even attacking religious figures, so Christians. So it's the opposite of democracy, and of course, it's all propaganda, and you're ruled by oligarchs who hate you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, you brought up the difference between Biden and Trump with the documents. Republicans have subpoenaed for the tapes, the audio tapes of Biden during the secret documents investigation in his garage, his house, his school office funded by China. But they say that they want to know why Robert Hur's final determination was that Biden is a weak old man with a poor memory. But now Merrick Garland is refusing to hand over the audio tapes. So Republicans want to hold him in contempt. But the White House is saying these tapes are actually under executive privilege by Joe Biden's request. And Merrick Garland, the head of the DOJ, you can't investigate him and you can't hold him in contempt. So just a few things. That's like the background, right? I thought that no one was above the law, but I guess Biden and Merrick Garland are. I've heard this from hundreds of Democrat leaders now. Biden gets to decide what is his and what is executive privilege. Meanwhile, two of Trump's cabinet members, Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, are either in jail or going to jail, and Donald Trump is on trial for this very thing. I feel like we're living in an upside down world where these elites have these rules that don't apply to anyone else as long as they're the ones that remain in power. What are your thoughts on that story?
It's 100. I mean, you're correct. It's all run on propaganda. They told you to. The party told you to ignore the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their last and most essential command. So that's what they're asking us to do right now. They're asking us to take a look at what's going on and just ignore that what's happening. It's just like, like what happened during COVID. You had a bunch of people who for decades and decades screamed, my body, my choice. I'm pro-choice, my body, my choice. And then, of course, they stopped saying that when it came to COVID, and we're supposed to not notice. And now they run around saying they're pro-abortion, which is almost hilarious if it wasn't so disgusting. Nobody's pro-abortion. If you are, you're a monster, right? What you're supposed to be is pro-choice, meaning leaving the decision between the doctor and their patient. And I don't want a G-man getting in between the doctor and patient relationship. And but now they can't say that because they betrayed their values that they screamed at the top of their lungs for decades and decades. And so they're doing the same thing with the Justice Department. Then it's funny how they claim, well, when Donald Trump if he becomes president, he'll become a dictator. Exactly. So you're telling me that any president in my lifetime could have just become a dictator, and the only reason he didn't was because out of the goodness of their hearts? Dick Cheney and George Bush didn't become dictators out of the goodness of their hearts. Really. So it's all fear mongering and it's all propaganda and it's all don't look over here, look over there. And even when you do look over here, it's not what you think. It's the opposite. It's democracy, it's liberty, it's freedom. It's just like what we say when we went into Iraq, and when we say when we went into Libya, what we say when we occupied Afghanistan for 20 years, or when we tried to overthrow Venezuela. It's not for natural resources. It's not for hegemony and imperialism. It's for democracy and liberty. It's like when Donald Trump was asked, hey, why are you leaving those troops in Syria? And he told the truth. He said, for the oil. And they're like, no, you're supposed to say for liberty and freedom. And that's another reason why they have to criminalize him and get rid of him, because he accidentally tells the truth sometimes.
Yeah. Well, under COVID, though, they did stick to the "my body, my choice." Your choice was Johnson and Johnson, which they then pulled from the market because of blood clots and heart issues. And then Moderna, who had never brought a single drug to market, that was one of your choices. And then Pfizer, the number one stock owned by members of Congress. Those were your choices. And so they allowed you to have your body and your choices.
Well, that's the thing that really frustrates me the most is that I come from the stand-up comedy world, and you know, I had stand-up comedians yell at me for even talking about my vaccine injury on my show, um, and saying that you're gonna make other people hesitant. And some of those people who yelled at me took the Johnson and Johnson vaccine, and then they got pulled, and then they still wouldn't even talk about that on their shows. It's like, so you're just cowards. So you're just now you're rolling over for the establishment, and you're shouting down anybody who stands up and questions this narrative. And those people have thankfully lost their audiences and screwed their own careers. Lots of them, not all of them. And so that's the reward they get for that. And it's just stunning to me to see that nobody is whole. I'm trying to hold them account, just like I'm glad to see what Chris Cuomo's doing. I'm glad to see that he's shining a light on the lies that he told at CNN about ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, early treatments, COVID, the vaccines and lockdowns and everything in general. He won't apologize for any of it because he's still a garbage person.
Yeah, well, it's just the information we had at the time. It's like, well, no, you were living in a New York bubble, and doing whatever CNN told you to do. So, but I agree. I am grateful that he's coming out and finally saying something. It did dawn on me that the U.S. government has done more to block ivermectin than they did to block fentanyl. Kind of
That's
interesting.
that's
Kind of
right.
interesting, right?
Well,
Uh,
the thing that reveals the lie of Chris Cuomo is that he's pretending like nobody knew about ivermectin except Joe Rogan did. So how is it that Joe Rogan and the Jimmy Dore Show knew about ivermectin, but you at CNN, with all your CNN power and all your investigators and producers, and nobody could do a Google search on what ivermectin was and find out it was on the WHO list of essential medicines, and it won the Nobel Prize for Human Medicine in 2015. Nobody could figure that out. Nobody could find any literature that said that ivermectin treated the COVID virus in vitro. Nobody could find that. Nobody could find, because it was right at the NIH website. I found it. Nobody could find out that they considered ivermectin to be a wonder drug, a miracle, second only to penicillin, and they were looking at it at that very moment to see if it could cure cancer. They're still coming out with studies that say it treats cancer. So no, so Chris Cuomo was either the most incurious newsman in the history of the world, or he is a paid liar.
Yeah, that's a great word, incurious. I had a lieutenant colonel from the Army on my show. Oh, shoot, her name just escaped me. Anyway, during that show, she said to me, Stephen, nobody prescribes more ivermectin on the planet than the US military.
Ah,
Nobody prescribes more ivermectin on the planet than the US military. I was blown away when she said that to me. Pretty wild. You did a great show recently over on your YouTube channel where you had the president, I think his last name is Buchel of El Salvador.
yeah.
He was speaking at a CPAC convention, and he systematically lays out how the US dollar is a scam and how paying taxes to the government is a scam. That comes out like the same week that Biden's top economic advisor, who has a music degree, not a financial or a money degree, but a music degree, says that we can infinitely print money and that the government can never go bankruptcy because we control and print our own currency. Like, how is the president of El Salvador more intelligent on US monetary policy than Biden's top economic advisor, who couldn't explain money, inflation, debt, bonds, modern monetary theory, etc.? What are your thoughts on those two guys?
Um, are you talking about Jared Bernstein? Was that his name?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So that was quite a funny clip to see him asked. The question posed to him was, hey, if we print our own money, uh, why do we have to borrow it? And he couldn't answer that question. He talked in circles and circles and circles, and then at the end, he pretended that the question was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And he's one of the top economic advisors to Joe Biden, and you wonder why we're in the situation we're in. And banks are starting to fail again, right? So it feels very similar to 2007 when we're creeping towards another burst of this economic bubble that's being created by the Fed and Wall Street and the government. So yeah, it's all I can say is that the president of El Salvador better get some really good security or is going to end up like the Slovakian president. And we just saw what happened with the Slovakian prime minister. He spoke out against big pharma in relationship to their COVID policies. He ordered an investigation of the vaccines and all the deaths surrounding. And then he also told the truth about Ukraine and said that the sanctions, he's against the sanctions on Russia, and he thinks that Ukraine should give up land to end this war. And so you can't go against the establishment like that and not think that there's going to be lead coming your way. And that's exactly what happened. So I think the same thing will happen to this El Salvadorian president if he becomes a problem, like if he's telling the truth, which is always the establishment and the imperialists are always allergic to the truth. He's telling the truth. So that the CIA is trying to figure out a way to get rid of him. Of course they are. That's what they do. But unfortunately, unfortunately for the CIA and the international billionaire criminals, what he's doing in El Salvador is working. And he actually got rid of the criminals, got rid of the cartels, and that was also a very scary proposition. He did it. He somehow lasted. He didn't get assassinated. And so, yeah, he laid out the game about how our money is paper backed up by paper, and there's nothing real about it. And as soon as the rest of the world decides that or realizes that's what it is, it's over for us. And that is true. Our economy is backed up by the fact that the United States dollar is the reserve currency of the world. But the big mistake that the United States has made is by weaponizing that, meaning they put sanctions on people, and they can do that on countries, and they can do that because the United States dollar is the reserve currency. And let's remember the reason why they killed Gaddafi in Libya. One of the reasons was he wanted to go off the dollar and the euro, and he wanted to create a monetary system for Africa that would compete with the euro and the dollar, and then what happened to him. So, but that's now happening with countries we can't do that to. So there's a thing called BRICS, which is another economic power center, right? It's Russia, it's China, India, South Africa. A lot of countries now are joining Venezuela, and they're joining onto a new monetary system because when we put sanctions on Russia, that's in order to screw Russia. They're like, well, we can't play this game anymore. And all these other countries see, well, I don't want to become a victim of U.S. sanctions at the whim, and they know there's no moral reason for the sanctions. They're just doing the sanctions in an economic war with Russia. So countries are now waking up to that. They're starting to create their own economic power centers, their own reserve currencies. And Saudi Arabia has undermined the petrodollar, which is what props up our dollar also. People don't realize what the petrodollar is because it's never talked about on the billionaire-owned news because they don't want you to know what it is. And so because of our sanctions on Russia, Saudi Arabia started selling. They have an agreement with the United States that they would never sell oil in any other denomination besides the U.S. reserve currency. And so what that means is when anybody wants to buy oil, they have to then take their currency, convert it to U.S. dollars, and then buy it from Saudi Arabia. And that artificially inflates our economy and the strength and gives our dollar strength because now countries all around the world have to keep the United States dollars on reserve if they ever want to trade. And so, but that's going away. And so look at the El Salvador, he's also pushing Bitcoin, which is hated by the donor class, right? Because they can't control it because it's blockchain. And I don't understand that, but all I know is that's how it works and that they can't control it. And like they did with the truckers in Canada, they can turn off your bank account like that at the drop of a hat illegally, which a court just admitted it was done illegally. No one will pay a price for that. Justin Trudeau won't pay a price for that. And so, but they can't do that with Bitcoin. So they can't control your money with Bitcoin. And so that's why that's a real threat.
Yeah.
And so what I predicting and what I've already seen is that whenever there's a terrorist attack, or they're going to say, oh, they used Bitcoin to fund them. They had uh, what they call a ransomware attack on a school district here in California, and they wanted the money in Bitcoin. And they said, see, this is all, we got to shut down this Bitcoin because this is how terrorism works. And I wouldn't be surprised to find out that was the CIA or the MI6 or the FBI who was doing that ransomware attack, so they can do this propaganda, just like they had those FBI plants in the crowd on January 6th, just like they invent all these terrorist attacks, and then they find these mental defectives to go carry them out, and they go, look, we stopped it. Just like they concocted a scheme to kidnap the governor of Michigan, and it turns out it was mostly FBI guys involved in that. So that's what your FBI is doing, and CIA, and they're concocting. Oh, they also did Russiagate, right? So, but again, this doesn't get reported in the paper because or in the news media, because the news media is owned by the people who want those things to happen. They wanted Russiagate to happen, right? So they want to get rid of Bitcoin. So you're not going to ever get these. They were against the truckers. They're against freedom. They're against bodily autonomy. They're for corporations being able to mandate emergency experimental medical treatments that you have to take or you can't go to work or travel. So that's why shows like this are really important. And that's why they censor the hell out of shows like this too. So good
Yeah.
luck getting this monetized. Well, you gotta watch what you put in the title.
Yeah. I'll put Joe Biden is the best president we've ever had. And then YouTube will be like, oh yes, let's promote the heck out of this
Promote it.
video. All right. Well, it does kind of make you wonder, like, why are we paying taxes? Because they don't care how much tax money comes in. They just go digitally print whatever they want and then create a bond and then print money behind that. Once you start investigating all of it, you go, wait a minute, the only purpose for taxes is to keep us poor. Like they're not really, like, when you really understand, it's like, what is the point of paying taxes?
Um, I'm with you. If they can just print $200 billion and send it to Ukraine, which is what they did, why do you have to tax me to get 200 billion? I don't. So that was basically that was kind of the same question that was posed to Biden's economic advisor, Jared Bernstein. And of course, I haven't heard a really good answer to it yet.
Yeah, no, I haven't either. And the deeper I dig, the more I go, wait a minute, this whole thing is a scam. It's like, I feel like um, the book 1984 is becoming like a manual to how to survive the government, and also like a history book versus like a made up fictional story. Like when you said, ignore your eyes and what your ears, ignore the evidence. It's like, oh my gosh, this is like right out of 1984, where the
Yes.
government just completely tried to control thinking and the information that we were receiving. Well, Jimmy, this has been a great show. I appreciate you taking time out of your day. Tell my people how to find your YouTube show, your website, if they want to come watch one of your comedy shows.
So we're doing a live panel video comedy show this Sunday at 7 p.m. Pacific time on Rumble. Just go to jimmydore.com. That's spelled Dore, jimmydore.com. You can find all my stuff, all my stand-up comedy videos, all my live tour dates. We'll be in Ashland. We're going to be in Ashland, Virginia, Athens, Georgia, Rutherford, New Jersey, and Minneapolis coming up in the next few weeks. So jimmydore.com. And I appreciate the conversation. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll put a link down so that people can go check that out. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Okay, you too.